Hello and welcome back. My name is Eddie Jennings from EJSLLC.com, and this is the second of 5 videos on the Advanced Interval series, where we're going to spend a little bit of time working with the minor intervals. Since we mentioned them briefly in the last video, I wanted to take a few minutes and make sure that they get their due time with study. So without further ado, let's jump into minor intervals. So we touched on minor intervals a little bit in the last video, as far as you take the major interval and you shrink it or make it smaller by a half step to create a minor interval. I'm going to spend a little bit more time on the minor intervals. I'm going to draw an A minor scale. So this is a natural minor scale. Oh, let me change to the pen, that'll be more effective. I'm doing this in the treble clef. So this is an A natural minor scale. Just like the C minor scale or C major scale, there's no sharps or flats with this. All the diatonic notes are natural. For A, you have the same thing. Now, what I want to focus on with this is the third, so A to C. In a minor scale, the diatonic interval of a third is a minor third. Just like in the major scale, the diatonic interval of a third is a major third. So if I were to take this minor third, so A to C, and for a minor third, if we were to add a half step, it becomes major. It's kind of obvious because when we took that major interval and subtracted a half step from its distance, it became minor. I treat minor a little bit different. I kind of treat it as its own entity, because minor doesn't just come from major, in my opinion. Minor is its own thing that can be turned into major, just like major is its own thing that can be turned into minor. And then if we take minor and we subtract a half step, it then becomes diminished. And that's why I wanted to separate out the minor intervals for a moment. So we have our major or minor third. If we were to lower the upper note by a half step, just like we've done with our previous intervals, that's going to become a diminished third. And if we were to raise the lower note by a half step, that will also give us our diminished third. Now, if we were to then take the upper note and raise it a half step, that's not going to become an augmented third. It's already a minor interval, that A to C. So this will now become a major third. And we can do the same by lowering the initial pitch. This is also a major third. And just with the previous video, we'll go to the keyboards so you can hear this change. And you heard the change a little bit when we were talking about perfect and major intervals, but I wanted to reiterate about the minor intervals, as far as you take that and then they can become diminished or they can become major. Theoretically, you could add another half step and it goes from major to augmented, but a lot of times, like let's take that third for example, we can take it from A to C minor third, then A to C sharp major third, and then we could keep the C sharp and lower the A to A flat to get augmented third. That's one of these intervals that theoretically can exist, but it's not an interval that you're going to see much in regular practice. This will be brief, but I did want to demonstrate the changing of the minor intervals. And so let's go back to the example that we had in the previous part of the video, the A minor scale. All right, and that minor third, A to C. So I do like to treat minor third, or not minor third, but minor intervals kind of as their own entity, as I mentioned, because they do occur diatonically within minor scales. So we take the minor third, and if you were to widen the interval, it becomes major. So I can either change the C to C sharp, giving us, and that becomes the major sound, Or I can change the A to A flat and we get another major third that way. Now, for diminished intervals, you have some common diminished intervals like diminished fifths and such, but I want to use the example that we had in the first part of the video about the minor third becoming a diminished third, and the diminished third is not something you're going to see very often. It can happen, and so here's what would happen sound-wise. So if I take the minor third, A, C, and I lower the C a half step, becomes a C flat, this is the end effect. And that sounds a lot like a major second, the whole step, right? Well, diminished third is going to sound like a major second. So it's one of the reasons why you might not see that very often. We could do a minor six. So if I were to start on A and go to the 6th degree of the A minor scale, that's our minor 6. Again, it's my favorite sounding interval. If I were to diminish this, and if I were to take the F and lower it to F flat, I now have, which if you recall from previous videos, sounds a lot like a perfect fifth. Well, it is. But spelling-wise, of course, it would be a diminished 6. So as you continue studying your intervals, you're going to find some that can exist theoretically, but don't necessarily have functional practice in music that you will hear. Shorter video, but I did want to spend some time on the minor intervals. And remember, as you're learning these intervals and learning how to alter them and turn the minor into the major interval, or take the minor interval and diminish it, or continue expanding it into augmented intervals, you're going to start finding that many intervals are going to be inharmonic, and so while they may exist from a theory perspective of you just keep adding half steps or taking half steps away to expand or contract an interval, it might make more sense in actual practice to use the inharmonic spellings of the intervals as we've talked about thus far. Hopefully you found the video useful for you, and if you did, I encourage you to like the video as well as share it with your fellow music students or your fellow colleagues that might find the information useful. Make sure you also subscribe to the channel so you can be aware of new content as it's posted. Thanks for taking the time to watch, and I'll see you in the next video.